It was for the Queen her last visit to Wales, the opening of the 6th session of the Senedd last year. In a Welsh Parliament so symbolic of national identity, she was joined by an English-born prince, now king. His story is woven into that of modern Wales perhaps like no other royal, by virtue of a dynastic title his mother gave him when he was 9. That title was the Prince of Wales, and as Charles is now king amid scenes like this in Cardiff, he's rapidly conferred the title now to his son William. It's been welcomed by many, but certainly not all in Wales. The debate, the backlash even, has already started, and the king of all people knows just how divisive this issue can be. It was 1958 when Charles, then at prep school, was declared Prince of Wales, announced at the end of the Empire and Commonwealth Games in Cardiff.
I intend to create my son Charles Prince of Wales today.
What do you think of the news about Prince Charles being made Prince of Wales? Well, I think it's really wonderful.
Very pleased to hear that Prince Charles has been made Prince of Wales at such a wonderful time. We're very pleased and proud that we got the Prince of Wales because we haven't had one for a long time.
The Queen presents her son to the people, the 21st Prince of Wales.
Charles was 20 when formally presented as Prince of Wales at his investiture in Carnarvon.
For me, it's a way of officially dedicating one's life or part of one's life to Wales, and the Welsh people, after all, wanted it.
But a significant number didn't. As a student learning Welsh at Aberystwyth University earlier that year, he made his maiden public speech partly in Welsh at a youth festival.
Pleser mawr I mi wedi cael fod yn Eisteddfod Genedlaethol earlier.
The folk singer David Iwan was one of those who walked out in protest.
We were making a political statement which was difficult to explain to some people, but we knew we had to do it. Most people in Wales do have a feeling for the royal family. I can't deny that. But we felt that the whole circus surrounding the investiture was an attempt to quash the growth of national feeling in Wales.
David Iwan's song Carlo, a gentle lampooning of the prince and soundtrack to the anti-investiture movement, caused outrage at the time.
The 1950s and the 1960s had seen an increasing debate around Welsh identity in many ways. People felt that Welsh culture, Welsh nationality was under threat by the modern world. The number of Welsh speakers was falling, the number of people who went to chapel, a really important symbol of Welshness, was falling as well. So there was a defensiveness in Welsh culture. People struck back against that. And in many ways, the investiture becomes a focal point for all of these things.
The security grip on Carnarvon is now absolute.
Against a backdrop of a long-running bombing campaign by militants in Wales, 2 died when their device exploded prematurely hours before the ceremony. The event itself, with dramatic billing, passed off peacefully.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, do become your liege man of life and limb.
To a backdrop of street parties.
I was up till 2 o'clock this morning blowing 100 balloons there. I mean, look at me. I was 20 stone yesterday.
But if it was meant, as the Times newspaper then noted, as a sop to pacify the nationalist stirrings of Wales, it failed. And this is how the then Prince reflected on this controversial chapter in his life.
And I think if I've learned anything during the last 8 weeks, it's been about Wales in particular, and its problems, and what these people feel about Wales. You see, I think they feel so strongly about Wales as a nation, and it means something to them, and they're depressed by, you know, what might happen to it if they don't try and preserve the language and the culture, which is very unique and special to Wales. And if something is unique and special, I see it's well worth preserving.
In subsequent years, the failure of his marriage to the late Diana, Princess of Wales, divided opinion in a different context.
The Queen, Prince Philip and Prince Charles came to give the royal seal of approval to the new Welsh Assembly.
But in time, with the royal family embedded in the architecture of Welsh devolution, the voices of protest have appeared quieter. The King's ties to Wales now include a home in Carmarthenshire, where recently he met Dafydd Iwan for the first time, protester and prince 50 years on. Do you think his experiences in Wales will in any way shape his reign as king?
Well, I mean, let's look at it like this. I'm not a royalist. I say, of course, I prefer a republic with an elected president. But if we are to have a king, it's better to have a king who is aware of the history and traditions of Wales and the Welsh language than somebody who hasn't or is antipathetic.
Yet divisions surface once again as William and Kate, with barely a pause for breath, are declared the new Prince and Princess of Wales. They had their first home together in Wales, have pledged to serve with humility. But already a petition calling to end the title has more than 25,000 signatures. The last native Prince of Wales, it states, was killed by the English in the Middle Ages. In Treorchy, where the now King visited this summer, we asked for views on the subject.
We are a United Kingdom. I like the idea that our royal family has got one foot very firmly in Wales.
We don't need a Prince of Wales. I don't think we need a Prince of Wales. I think we need independence now. We don't need an Englishman as our prince.
Some people think it's time to end the process of a British monarch appointing a Prince of Wales.
No, I think it's British tradition. I'm a firm royalist and I believe carrying on the traditions.
In time, there's a debate to be had, say some Welsh politicians, about this. So too, what style a new investiture might take. A repeat of the last, says this historian, would be a mistake.
Yes, some people will be very happy, some people will use it as an opportunity of celebrating Welshness, but it will also create a backlash. It will become a focal point for debate, for discussion around Wales's position with the United Kingdom. And the stakes are so much higher now than they were in the 1960s. We're not talking about whether Wales should have a parliament anymore. We're talking about whether Wales should be an independent nation.
Tomorrow, that shy, reflective student once proclaimed Wales's prince returns as king. Thousands are expected to line these streets to welcome him. Others bearing a different message too.